Well, Donald Trump has never been able to convincingly express sympathy or sorrow for anyone other than himself. That is the mark of a sociopath, of course, the inability to feel sorry for someone. Many sociopaths are capable of saying, I'm sorry for your loss if someone in your family dies, but they are incapable of actually feeling sorry for your loss. They just know they're supposed to say those words, those well-rehearsed words. But the laziest and most mentally vacant president in history, Donald Trump, as he approaches 80 years old, no longer has the energy or the concentration to be able to continue to pretend that he feels sorry for even the members of the American military killed in service in his war. No president has ever gotten this wrong until Donald Trump. Acknowledging and honoring American military deaths is something every president got right. Most brought no particular eloquence to the moment, but they always found the words to acknowledge and honor military sacrifice until Donald Trump. Last night at 9:17 p.m., with the cameras rolling, Donald Trump's mind and feelings appeared to be in apparent sociopathic lockdown, possibly, when he was asked about the 6 Air Force personnel on a refueling plane that crashed in Donald Trump's new war zone. Watch what Donald Trump says and does in a moment that so obviously calls for sympathy and admiration and honor, things Donald Trump apparently just cannot feel.
Who else?
Nothing. Not a word. Just an immediate turn away. Who else? Who else has a question that's not about the war dead? 6 American Air Force personnel lose their lives in a refueling accident in Donald Trump's war, and Donald Trump doesn't have a word to say about them and their sacrifice and their families' suffering. Air Force Sergeant Tyler Simmons, age 28, of Columbus, Ohio, was on the plane that went down. Here's what Tyler Simmons' cousin and grandmother said to a local NBC affiliate yesterday afternoon, several hours before Donald Trump could not think of a word to say about the sacrifice Sergeant Simmons made and the suffering of his family.
This could have been prevented. We didn't need to be in this war. You know, this is uncalled for. And this is what we get.
Families are suffering right now. Not only our family, but there are other families that's lost loved ones. And just to create a war because you want to create a war, it's not right. It is not right.
The 5 others whose deaths Donald Trump refused to even acknowledge or comment on are Major John Klinner, 33, of Auburn, Alabama; Captain Ariana Savino, 31, of Covington, Washington; Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, 34, of Bardstown, Kentucky. The other 3 on that plane were all from Ohio, serving in the Ohio Air National Guard. They were Sergeant Tyler Simmons, Captain Seth Koval, 38 years old, of Stoutsville, Ohio, and Captain Curtis Angst, 30, of Wilmington, Ohio. The dignified transfer will take place Wednesday and be closed to the press at the request of the families. That doesn't mean Donald Trump won't try to find some way to exploit the dignified transfer, as he did exploit the first dignified transfer that occurred during his war. Donald Trump disgraced himself as the only president in American history who has tried, or would even consider trying, to raise money over the bodies of the war dead in a war that he started. Donald Trump has sent out a fundraising email using a photograph of Donald Trump wearing a ridiculous and disrespectful hat at that dignified transfer. Any other president would be immediately rebuked by unanimous votes of the House and the Senate on a resolution condemning the president for dishonorable behavior, at a minimum for doing something like this. MS Now reports Donald Trump's fundraising email with the photograph exploiting the war dead tells the victims of that email solicitation, quote, as a national security briefing member, you'll receive my private national security briefings, unfiltered updates on the threats facing America, the straight truth on border invasions, foreign adversaries, deep state sabotage, and every danger the fake news hides. You'll get the inside scoop direct from me, President Trump. And imagine being stupid enough to receive that email and send in that money, believing you were going to get something truthful from Donald Trump. Donald Trump continues to deepen his pathological lying about his war, saying today he has spoken to a former president, a Democrat, who supports his war. That is, of course, an obvious lie. Each of the former living Democratic presidents, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, issued statements saying that no, none of them talked to Donald Trump about his war. That kind of public hallucination by a president is more than enough to invoke a 25th Amendment procedure based on the mental health grounds that the president is incapable of serving and remove the president from his duties, especially in the middle of a war started by that same incompetent president who cannot explain why the war started or what will be necessary to end the war. Donald Trump gave the stupidest answer in the history of the question, when will the war be over?
I don't think it's going to be long. When it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Donald Trump has gone from saying the United States military doesn't need anyone's help in this war to desperately begging any and all foreign countries to help him in his war. Not surprisingly, no other country has yet to step into Donald Trump's war zone. Donald Trump has asked them to send ships to the Strait of Hormuz, which remains blocked with 20% of the world's oil supply stuck, and to increase the world's oil supply during this oil crisis created by Donald Trump. Donald Trump has turned to two countries to invite them, issue friendly invitations, to invite them to participate fully in the world oil market to increase the oil supply. The first of those countries is Russia, the country that is so far the biggest winner in Donald Trump's war. If Vladimir Putin could have asked one favor from Donald Trump, it might have been, please go to war with Iran and block the Strait of Hormuz. And so, American sanctions have been harming the Russian oil trade during the Ukraine war. They are now being lifted by Donald Trump. And the other country Donald Trump has invited back into the world oil market with his approval is Iran. That's right, Iran. The New York Times report, Iran has allowed some tankers to pass through the strait, including ones carrying oil to China and India, U.S. officials said, and that is with Donald Trump's approval. The most abused word of the Trump era is treason. The legal definition of treason seems to escape most people who use the word, especially Donald Trump, who uses it more than anyone else. Donald Trump is now calling accurate reporting on his war treason. That's his word for it. No matter how many times Donald Trump uses the word, no one has to fear a treason conviction because there hasn't been one since World War II. The reason we have not had a treason conviction since World War II is the Supreme Court has held that a necessary precondition for the crime of treason is a declaration of war. Because the Constitution defines treason as giving aid and comfort to our enemies, the word enemy carries legal meaning, and the only way to qualify as an enemy in a treason case is for that enemy to be named in writing in a declaration of war, which the United States of America has not passed since World War II. And yes, it's outrageous and further signs of Donald Trump teetering on the brink of dementia, but from Donald Trump, the word treason is just another empty threat, just like every threat issued by his FCC chair, who issues his threats on social media pretending to have powers that he doesn't have. Brendan Carr is the only deranged FCC chair in American history, the only one who imagines he has powers that don't exist when he threatens to revoke licenses of broadcast networks if their reporting on Donald Trump's war is accurate. The FCC chair has no such power, no matter what the networks do. He is a clown playing to an audience of one who is an ignoramus. And so accurate television reporting about Donald Trump's war will continue, and Donald Trump will continue to describe reporting on his war dead as treason. And when he's asked about it, he will immediately turn away from that question and ask the White House press corps, who else? And that next compliant reporter will do what they always reliably do for Donald Trump in the White House press corps. They will change the subject. And tonight the question remains, who else? Who else is going to die waiting for Donald Trump to feel it in his bones that it's time to end his war? Who else is going to die and have their deaths ignored by the president who sent them into war? The president who feels nothing. Who else?